Hello, hello, hello. Good to be back. Had a lovely week vacation, but I'm very, very happy to be back on stream with you guys. Got a very, very special guest for you today. It's going to be an incredible session, especially if you work with e-com brands or you are in the e-com space. We are going to be diving into a lot of information. My man Ashton has worked with over 35 million in ad spend and has a lifetime ROAS of a 4.8, which is absolutely insane. So we're going to get deep into the sauce today of how to build a brand with storytelling. And if you work with e-com brands or you have a marketing agency that works with e-com brands or you are an e-com brand, this is going to be the perfect session for you. But without further ado, I'm going to bring Ashton up so he can kind of talk a little about his story and who he is.
Yo.
Hey, my man. How you doing?
Good, brother. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Great to have you here.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited to talk about this. I think branding and what we're talking about today, specifically branding, building a brand through storytelling, it's kind of one of those nuanced things that a lot of business owners talk about. Everyone kind of wants, very few people know how to do it, or just very few people do it correctly. And so I do think it's an important conversation to have, knowing also that most of our viewers here are agency owners. I can talk to you guys on a more real level of how do you deal with clients who are really hyped up about it or maybe are having struggles doing it. And so really, I know the cadence of these are normally pretty relaxed and chill. And so I'm going to be speaking more of like if I was speaking to a friend, speaking to a peer, but then guiding you through these concepts. And so I'm pretty pumped to be here, dude.
Yeah, really glad to have you. If you guys can hear us all right and everything looks good, let's send some stakes in the chat or some ones or whatever device you're on, and we will get this rocking. He has an awesome presentation for you guys today. So if you guys can see us all right, we will get things moving.
Dope.
All right. There we go. We got the people. Alrighty, let me pull that up for you.
Cool. What's up, fam? So, like we said earlier, we're going to be talking more about brand building today. But before really kind of I jump in, this is kind of the outline of where we're going to be headed today. What is brand in and of itself? What is the construct of a brand? What is the anatomy of storytelling and brand? And then really want to kind of walk through some steps of things that will make you look incredible to your clients if you can start walking them through brand in and of itself. And also, what should you be getting from clients or any business or even for yourself if you're trying to build a brand? And I do think one of the things that has made us unique at Hemon inside of our company, I'll give a little bit of a background about us just in case you don't know me. But I do believe that even in the agency space or as a business owner, one of my intentions was right from the get-go, how do we even start building a brand for ourselves
Mm-hmm.
as our agency, as my personal brand? How do we continue to build that? Because I do believe that that is really the reason, a lot of the reason why we've been able to have the success we've had so far is built off of either A, my personal brand, or B, the brand that we've started to build within our own agency. So it should be applicable across the board. Um,
Love that.
Real quick on my journey, I'm very new into the internet marketing space. I've been in marketing for about 9 or 10 years so far, but really in the internet marketing world, my journey started really in April 2020 when I had started my company, Hemon. I was a marketer, performance marketer for several other brands that people knew about and built my reputation there. But my entrepreneur journey really started in 2020. And like most of you, I had no capital. I had no funding. I had a $200 nice little HP laptop that I got from Best Buy in one of those open box specials. And I really didn't have that many connections. I didn't really have networks to tap into. But what I did have was a really good skill. And I had developed a little bit of a reputation for what I could do, but not really on a brand standpoint. And so, like most of you, I started off with nothing. We grew really, really fast in our agency. I think we achieved like 118K in monthly recurring revenue by day 86 of having the agency. And the reason for that and why I'm highlighting it is because when you can start to build a slight even, you don't even have to have an incredible brand reputation, but if you can have an even slight reputation for what you do, then it can start to work really, really well. And so fast forward, April 2020, we started, we grew really fast. Really year one, we hit the 1.2 million. Year two, we hit 3.2. Year three, we had 6.1. And just across the board, what we've really started to build at Hemon was kind of like a three-pronged organization. We have our agency, which is our core business. We have Hemon X, which is just a training program for marketing, media buying, things like that, and then staffing, to where we can help other companies find marketers, put those people through our programs. And so that's really what our company looks like. Now, to do that internally as an agency owner, speaking to agency owners here, to do that, the only way that that was possible was to build not only a brand that customers or consumers could hold on to, but actually internal team. Could we build an organization that our internal team would grab onto and hold on to and really propel forward? It's the only way we've got to where we are, is building something that even A players go, hey, I want to be a part of that thing, and they come to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Cool.
That's the affiliate world I actually saw you at, the 2022.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was actually, so ironically, that was the first time I was out of country.
Oh,
Was in
wow.
Spain at that event. Yeah.
That's funny.
All right. So, basic question: what is brand? And I always like to tell people this is like, when you think about brand, we're in the agency space. We work mostly with ads, but ads will really kind of make you millions. It can definitely do that. We've all seen the power of it. But to make billions, to make that transition into billions or a large organization, brand is what allows that to happen, right? And so even just some of the quick examples of this is like Mr. or Beast Burger, right? Mr. Beast brand that launched in 2020. They hit $100 million in revenue. Kim Kardashian's brand, right? Skims launched 2019, valuated at $4 billion. Liquid Death, 2017, $700 million valuation. Prime Energy Drinks launched in 2022, January 2022, a $250 million in revenue. These are rapidly growing companies at breakneck speed. The only way these things happened was brand. Absolutely. And if you guys even remember like Liquid Death, which of these might be the less influencered brand, but if you guys even remember, like the thing that shot them off was that like they put some of Tony Hawk's blood inside of some skateboards, right? And they started selling it. And then every parent everywhere across the Midwest is like, oh, it's a Satan company. And that just exploded the company, right? So inside of this training, we're going to be talking about some of the constructs and the frameworks that they were using, but also how are they really building what they did when it comes to branding. Now, I do kind of want to make a quick assertion here of the importance of it, because I think this brand thing can be overhyped in a lot of areas. In my opinion, smaller companies overhype the importance of brand, and larger companies underhype it. And so for the vast majority of clients that we work with on a day-to-day basis and that you work with on a day-to-day basis, brand is important, but they might be overhyping it. Meaning you've probably had clients say, we're not doing that because it's off brand. And you might be like, that's the best performing ad that we have, right? Or that landing page is crushing it, but it's not on brand. Smaller companies will overhype the branding side. And so what I wanted to do was just let's distill brand down to what it actually is, right? So brand really in its truest sense is just the associations of identity and belief that a person attaches to an organization, a product, or a person, right? It's just the associations. That's all that real brand is, right? And building a big brand simply just means that you're having a greater volume of people having that same association of identification and belief, right? And so all building the brand or scaling the brand really is just increased volume and increased consistency of that identity and belief that you're instilling inside of the market. Okay, that's all it actually is. And so we can sometimes get really caught up into the fonts and the logos and the colors, but at the end of the day, all a brand is an association. It's just like a friend. It's a friend group. We all have that friend who's wild and crazy and does everything and doesn't think before they do, right? And all of that is that person's brand. And then you have the, secluded, introverted. You have to pull them by the arm to go out with you on some Friday night. They like to read. They like their homebody. That person has developed a brand, an identity and belief that you're now associating with that person, right? And so that's all brand is for a business. And the key here is just how can we increase the volume of that association, and how can we make sure that we're consistent with it so that we don't break that association? So at its simplest form, that's all that branding is, right? And so when it comes to an easy illustration, and you can even do this with a client, but branding and marketing as a whole, all that we do on a day-to-day basis as a marketer is that you imagine, this is your market right over here, right? This is the market. This is all the potential consumers that you have. And then you and your competitors are all over here, right? All we do as marketers is we send messages to the market to discover how do they feel, right? And that's it. All we're doing is us and the competitors, we're all on one side, the market's over there, and we're just sending them little messages of going, asking the question, is this how you feel? Is this how you resonate? Is this your worldview? That's all we're doing. And what we're waiting for in response is for the people out of that market to go, yes, that's me, right? That's how I feel. And it's the marketer or the business, the brand that can do that best. That is the one who wins always, right? And so the key here, though, is I think some people try to build a brand to encompass everyone here, when the goal is really just how do I encompass her, or how do I take the lion's share, or how do I just hit my goals into that market? That's a better way to look at it, because what some people are trying to do and become like, how do we become the top or the most high tier? The best businesses will go, how do I just tailor my brand in my market to hit my goals? Example, Southwest is not trying to be the largest airline company in the world. They are trying to find a subsect of people that they can capitalize on and take those subsects of people to hit their goals. Delta is the same way, right? They both appeal to a completely different type of traveler, but they're just recognizing this is our goal. Let's say it's $5 million a year, $100 million a year, $1 billion a year. Well, then how many people do I realistically need to convert in order to hit that objective? And as soon as you could become crystal clear on what that end objective actually is, whether it's a million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever, as soon as you become crystal clear on that, you can stop trying to build a brand for everyone and build the brand that just allows you to hit the target and hit the goals. Does that make sense? So then when it comes to marketing, all we're focused on is how do we do this middle section correctly? Okay. That market already exists. Competitors will always exist. But how do we just get the middle section most aligned, most effective, so that we can start capitalizing on the market share that we actually want to pull? Okay. Cool. It's the most basic brand illustration I can give.
Just have a quick question in the chat. They said, should you handle it or view it, I guess, if when small? So when you're actually small, since you say a lot of people overhype it or whatever, what do you think is the way that can be handled when you're small?
Yeah. So one, that will be covered mostly inside of this training, right? This is what most of this training is around, of how do you actually do it. But realistically, in the beginning, I would actually be asking the question of like, is brand your problem right now? Because most of the time when someone is a question, or they're like, how do we evolve our brand? But really they're not hitting any of their income or revenue targets, right? And so the question should actually be like less of how do we develop the brand, which requires you to be consistent, requires you to not change direction, but really you should actually be probably adapting and changing all the time because you're not hitting your revenue targets, which means you probably actually haven't identified your best brand positioning, right? So that's kind of the first nugget I would say there, is that when revenue is the priority, branding is not really the thing you should be looking at, right? There's kind of like that two camps within marketing, and there's the brand side, then there's direct response side. And until you really nail down direct response enough to start building the revenue, then brand is not as much of a priority, in my opinion. Cool. All right, let's talk about the anatomy of storytelling and brand. Starting with storytelling, because I do love storytelling when it comes to marketing as a whole. Indirect response, in brand side marketing, it doesn't really matter, but storytelling in and of itself has the ability to captivate an audience unlike almost anything else I've ever seen. The reason for this, though, is because it's really kind of buried into us, curated into us from generations and generations of the human species. If you look back way, way, way back in the day, before the internet, before really even printing press, right? Before Gutenberg created that printing press for books, we were passing information along through generations through storytelling, right? And so as humans, we are naturally designed to pay attention to stories. And so if you look at even things like Make America Great Again, no political affiliation, but the concept of what he was illustrating there was a story that people were captivated by, right? And what you'll find is that most great stories had at their core great ideas. And that's what people really gravitate towards or cling on to, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That is the start of a story that, as we know, has captivated millions. Once upon a time, right? All of these are just ways that people are naturally engineered to pay attention, to look at it. And great stories can have massive impact on the population, your market, right? And so we're almost engineered to pay attention to them, which is why I like storytelling, right? The reason for that is because our brains are really wired to avoid extra information, right? All of us as humans, you probably, if you drove today, you probably couldn't tell me all the billboards you drove by, right? You probably couldn't tell me all of the people's faces that you came by. The reason is like our brains are trying to remove as much distraction from things that don't seem important to us as possible. The same thing happens in our news feeds. Same thing happens in social media. You can't tell me all the posts that you've seen, all the ads that you saw, because your brain is like, oof, not important information to me, blur it out. We don't need it, right? This is why we even see the creative fatigue concept, right? When people start seeing the same thing over and over again and it didn't feel relevant, the brains just ignore it, right? And so with stories, what it allows us to do really is to start bypassing some of these hardwiring mechanisms in our brain that say, stop paying attention, right? Our brain really has kind of three levels anytime it gets new information. It starts in the primal section of our brain, right? The croc brain. This is the whole part of our brain that goes, will this hurt me as a human, Our brains are designed to first protect it in survival. We want to survive, right? And so the first layer of our brain, the information pass through is like, will this hurt me or can I ignore this? The brain wants to ignore as much information as possible, right? Then it passes to the emotion side or the midbrain side, which is really where the brain goes, okay, is this relevant to me? Is this good or a bad thing? Right? Because the brain still wants to try to ignore. And if it passes that, it moves into the neocortex where it's like, I like this, or, ooh, this is cool, but I don't need it. Right? If you want to read more about this concept, it's in Pitch Anything or in Claff. You can go read it there. But I bring this up because what storytelling allows you to do is almost bypass that first section to where the brain is now paying more attention just because it's designed to pay attention to stories. And if you can keep the reader's attention, you're going to quickly bypass the second layer and get into their neocortex faster, right? So the science of why I like it is really the big thing, okay? Because before you can really persuade someone to take on an offer, you have to get them to bypass their primal hardwiring that is begging it to ignore whatever you have to offer them. Okay. So it can quickly go into, hey, this is not spam, move on, but only if the stories that you start to craft and create, whether in your brand story, whether in your positioning, whether in the emotion that you pull from your ads, if it can get them and connect with the reader, it'll encourage the brain to say, hey, this information is important to me. Let's keep reading. Right. Cool. So now that we know why, okay, storytelling is important, great, but what are really the elements of a powerful storytelling or brand positioning? Well, it really starts with persuasion as a whole. Okay. That's really what storytelling, what advertising, marketing, branding, all of this is just a form of persuasion. And what we're trying to demonstrate to the market is a couple things. One, that, hey, we understand you, like the illustration showed before. But not only do we understand you, we can give you what you're looking for. We can give you what you actually want. So there are 3 keys to persuasion, but we'll include the storytelling and branding as a whole. But in persuasion in general, there are 3 keys that you must hit. The first one is desire. We all kind of know this as agency owners, as marketers, right? That the brand must really entice and capitalize on what your market wants, yearns for, and is motivated by, right? In your mind, your market is sick, and our goal is to accurately diagnose their sickness in a way that they actually agree with. I think one of the problems I can see that business owners start to have, and if you have clients that work in branding, or if you're a brand yourself, one of the problems I see the biggest across the board is that the brands create the brand, the messaging, positioning based on what they want rather than what the market already wants.
Yeah.
Right. So it's one thing to say, hey, I see the market. I see that there's a need, there's a gap, and I'm going to give them this solution. But if your market is not conscious of that being a possible solution for them, you will have a much harder time convincing them. Right.
And what's the best way in figuring that out, do you think?
The best way is asking them. The best way is asking the market. It's basic stuff that very few marketers do, but is actually surveying the market. What does the market want? If you want more tactical stuff, going to competitor comments inside of their ads or on Amazon, go to review sites on Yelp if you're brick and mortar. Figure out what are the things that people are saying that is missing inside of this product, they lacked inside of the experience, or what is the side they liked most? Because if you can build your brand and your messaging more around those things, then you can start to take over market share. But this is why we see things like, example, if we're all entrepreneurs here, regardless of what type of company you have, very few of us actually think we need mindset training, right? Like, it's not like the thing we want. Internally, if you're a veteran business owner, you actually kind of understand that mindset is almost everything. Like, it literally just kind of is. But if you put up an ad to a e-com business owner right now, and you said e-commerce business owner mindset training, it's going to flop compared to e-commerce Facebook ad blueprint, because people are always going to gravitate towards what they think they need rather than what they actually need. So your desire or your brand positioning, if you're building a brand, must align around what they kind of already think they need until you've earned the right to actually train them and teach them on what they need, right? So you've got to entice them. So Eugene Schwartz, a famous marketer, my all-time favorite direct response marketer, but he's basically saying that the prospect needs to actually be able to visualize every drop of satisfaction that they will achieve or that your product or service will give, right? And so your brand, when you're thinking about what visuals do we use inside of our branding, what colors, this is where color theory starts to come in, but it needs to attach itself to a desire that they already kind of are aware of, right? That's the first step. That's the first key. The second key, and this is probably the biggest thing because this is really where brand spend goes and allocates itself towards. If you look at the Super Bowls, the biggest brands in the world doing commercials or billboards, even ads online, this is where they really focus, which is identification. Okay. So basically, identification is that the offer must actually show the prospect how they can get their cure faster and easier. But basically, also that your product, your brand, when they associate themselves with you, they also are saying something about themselves. Okay. No one just buys a product purely for its utility from a brand. They buy the product not just because of what it does for them, but because of what it says about them. This is the identity part, right? This is why do some people shop at Whole Foods versus Walmart? Why do some people shop at Gucci versus Nike? Right? We can try to say that Gucci makes better shirts all day long, but at the end of the day, it's a shirt. And the quality is not that much different, but we will pay 10x the cost because of what it says about us and our identity, right? So this is also why branding can be so expensive, but it's also important. You know, when you think about Coca-Cola or Pepsi, right? They spend millions, if not billions of dollars every year on advertisements, but they're not direct response ads, right? But what they're trying to do is implement inside of you an identity with you as the user, as the viewer of their advertisements, so that when you're at Target next week, when you see the products and you're choosing between them, that you identify with their brand more, right? And so that's probably one of the biggest keys inside of branding is what is the identity that you're allowing a market to actually align with when purchasing with you? What does it say about their income? What does it say about their lifestyle? What does it say about their preferences, their worldview, maybe even political views? What is it saying about them? And are you actually clearly demonstrating to them what that identification is within your branding? Right?
If you're going through that process of getting people to identify with you and you don't have billions of dollars like Coca-Cola, how do you go about creating that identification and reaching out to people that would identify with you?
Absolutely. So this comes in a couple areas. One is, what are you actually saying? Is the things that you're saying about the pains of why your product exists or the solutions, are those actually aligning with what they're looking for? Right? Example, if I was in Ferrari, I was selling a Ferrari, I'm probably not going to talk about how it gets from point A to point B safely, or that
Or the
it's
gas mileage.
or the gas mileage, right? Because that's not an identity that they care about. Or even just, you know, how sleek is the car? Well, that's kind of cool, but really, if I want to identify with them, I'm probably going to create a picture of someone who is getting off of work, coming home into their parking lot, and they got their nice suit on. They're getting out of their car in the driveway, and their neighbors are standing outside, and the husband across the street is super jealous, right? Because I'm starting to create the identification of what does it say about you? You're someone of esteem, of status by purchasing this product. And because you're purchasing this product, you're not just creating an identity. What I'm trying to do as the brand is actually enforce the identity that you want. And that my product or my service, by purchasing it, is you enforcing your own identity that you say that you want, right? So a part of that, though, just to add more color to that, because that was a perfect question for this, is that your brand really has to position itself behind the core motivators that your market has. Every human has a motivator that they are using to make decisions, right? And some people will lean more towards different motivators than others. And really, there are 9 psychological motivators that humans have for doing almost anything, right? And this is a mistake I think a lot of marketers make, is that we, as copywriters or direct response, we often talk about the hell and the heaven, right? My goal is to bring someone from hell to heaven, and then the in between, that's my service, right? And that's what we focus on. But the big mistake here, the thing that we're missing out on, is that everyone has a hell and a heaven, but that does not mean that they actually have the motivation to go in between the two. Okay? There's a motivation that's going to cause them to take action enough to actually convert. The example I always use here is the idea of like Have you ever been laying on the couch and you're hungry, right? But that fridge feels really far away. So you don't do anything. You just lay there, right? You had a desire, you had a pain, but the motivation in between was not large enough for you to exert the amount of energy required to get what you want, right? And so if you started looking at psychological motivators here, like for example, that person laying on the couch, if they thought about how, man, they're trying to get in shape right now and them constantly not eating, actually, they're eating too little and they're not doing the work they need, they're going to hurt their metabolism. That's going to throw them back. If I didn't focus on the idea of achievement for them actually being able to reach their goals, well, then that might have gained enough of the motivation for them to actually convert, right? So the 9 are achievement, autonomy, belonging, competence, empowerment, engagement, esteem, nurturance, and security. Your market has one or more, most likely more, of these motivators that they hold on to more than anything else, right? Example, someone looking to buy a Ferrari is probably not too concerned about security. Not really a motivator for them to expend that amount of money on that car, right? But what they might want is the esteem and the achievement, right? And competence. Those are their motivators to actually take action and convert. And so in my advertising, I wouldn't want to focus on the security or even engagement, right? Or autonomy. I would be wanting to focus on the competence. How you having this shows that you're competent, which leads to esteem. I want to be seen highly among all my peer group. I want my wife to be like, dang, you're even hotter now. You know what I mean? Like I want those things to be elevated. And when you're thinking about branding, what motivators are you actually bringing up, right? What pictures are you trying to create that actually motivate your market to go, ooh, this brand clearly delivers on the motivators that I actually have as a consumer and what I want. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So the final belief, or the final key, number 3, is belief, right? So for any prospect to make a conversion decision, they must be affirmed in 2 areas. 1, having their current core assumptions and beliefs reinforced. And then 2, that their purchase decision will not blow up in their face. And this comes a big part of brand, and where most people will fail in branding is that they might nail one of these, but not the other, right? Meaning they might have that their current core assumptions and beliefs about why they're getting this product or what problem it solves is correct, but their purchase decision, or what we're not doing, is focused on the quality of the product, the efficiency of the product. And so therefore, the purchase decision over time, if your company keeps failing at slow delivery, right? Or the product's not exactly how people expected it to be. Maybe your marketing was way too good and people all of a sudden put your product up here and you're delivering services or products down here. It's going to blow up in their face, which is the final part of persuasion or branding, is that people have to believe that you're dependable. Right? So as humans, we want to feel secure in our decisions. We not want to know that not only did we do the right thing, attain the right things, but that our current perception of the puzzle pieces are correct. What I mean by that is, what we want to believe is that, hey, if I buy this Facebook ads template, right, my belief is that this is going to fix all my problems. But then when they go test it and it doesn't work, all of a sudden it feels like it got blown up back in their face. And so this is also why, if we think brand, why do internet marketers have such a bad brand? It's because a lot of times we're delivering products that end up blowing up in the customers' faces. And so now all of a sudden, the brand of internet marketers as a whole goes down, which then makes your job harder as an agency owner to get clients. Because now they're attaching that brand, the association, regardless of whether or not it's coming from you, but the association of it is being attached to you, and that's making it harder, right? Cool. How to
I love
create
the course gurus.
Yes, sir. All right. So, how to create a brand? Well, there's a couple steps to this. First, and if you're doing this with clients, this is the area where I'd encourage you to, if it feels like they're really held on to the brand, or maybe they've never spent an ounce of time thinking about their brand, this would be a great thing for you to schedule a call with them and start working through this part. And they will feel, one, you're going to gain authority. They're going to trust you more. But 2, it's really going to allow you guys to have a more organized view, because the biggest thing I'm seeing, not the biggest, but with a lot of partners, and you guys probably see this too, they have very low articulated brands. They just kind of tell you that's not on brand. You're like, great, do you have brand guidelines? And they're like, no, but it's just not on brand. Go look at our past stuff, right? It's like, it's not organized. So if you can do this, you can actually have a little bit more of an organized flow with them. So you have things that you can go off of, right? So first, determine your vibe, right? So every brand in and of itself, it's a character, right? Every brand is a character, whether you have a personal brand or a face of it, there is a character to your brand. And so you want to determine what that actual vibe is, right? It should have qualities to make it relatable and personable to the audience. The basically should be really built around your core values as a company, but your personality, the mission statement of your brand, right? And then making the brand character come to life is basically allows your audience to hold on to something. This is why, in my opinion, over the next 10 to 15 years, and maybe even faster, to be honest, we're seeing it already, but like personal brands are making a massive comeback. Like it's a massive comeback. You're seeing that YouTubers or influencers online, they can start companies and boom, billion-dollar companies overnight. Why is that? It's because people are now in the world with social media. We like attaching our relationships, our entertainment to people, to things, to specific things, right? You don't see anyone getting all excited about HP or Sears anymore, right? We like attaching our decisions, our trust with humans. Right. And so you've got to determine what it is. And your brand face doesn't have to be a human, but it has to be specific so that people can start attaching the associations to something specific. Right. Next, clearly establish your conflict and resolution. Like all great stories, there is a antagonist and there's a protagonist. There's the hero, there's the villain. So if you want to create a good brand, one of the biggest things you have to do is to start attaching or figuring out what is the conflict, what is the antagonist that our company exists to defeat, right? What are we actually trying to beat, right? And a big thing here is the whole hero's journey. Most of you have probably heard about this. It came from Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. But the whole idea of the hero's journey is that as basically there's this world before a solution exists, it's turmoil, it's terrible, right? There's rioting in the streets. And then as time goes on, there's this emerging heroic character that comes up, which is essentially basically you want to be the consumer. Some business owners make the mistake of thinking that they're the hero. No, your consumer's the hero. But in the hero's journey, the hero finds a mentor, right? You think Luke Skywalker, it was Yoda. Right? So you've got to find the mentor, and that hero finds the mentor, which is therefore the brand, and allows the hero to then overcome the challenges they're experiencing in their life because of the lessons or the product or the service that your brand can give to them. And then at the end of it, as you guys all know, there's a hero that emerges as victorious, and there's this brand new world, right? Now, the hero's journey has much more details, and there's oftentimes of a learning and then a falling, and then it goes back up. But realistically, what you're trying to do is if my consumer or my customers are the hero of the story, which everyone is the hero of their own story, they are going through these challenges. How then can my brand appeal as the mentor that they've always been looking for? Right? That thing that can give them what they want and make them the successful hero in the story. So you want to, as a brand, go, why do we exist? Which is often found inside of the mission statement or the vision statement of your companies. So, AKA, also, if you're working through with clients, what is their vision statement? What is their mission statement? If they can't repeat it to you, that's a huge gap, right? Which is also going to be why, A, probably their marketing is not as successful, and B, they're not going to be able to build a brand because I'll dive into this later, but the vision and the mission statement has to be much more, or brand has to be much more than just marketing. Okay. So then after you've done that, you figured out what is our conflict, what is our resolution, then you want to focus on your value proposition or propositions, right? You guys know what this is. Your story essentially should clearly communicate the unique value that you're bringing to the audience. And then this value proposition should be intertwined into your story. Okay. If your brand does not have an about section on their website that tells a consumer why the brand exists, how did it get started, who's the owners, what was the problem, and why the products actually exist today, that's a gap. You're missing out on the brand because there can't be really a brand unless there's a brand story. And if we think about the big brands that we think of now, or the ones I showed earlier, right? We think about the Prime or we think about Mr. Beast. They don't need a brand story for those brands because the owner itself is the brand. And we all know the story of the brand of those people. And that's why their brand took off, is because we actually already know. And we're almost rooting for them as a brand because we do know the story. And so if you're an e-commerce brand and you don't have this stuff filled out, you got to have it, because that's what's going to allow the user to go, this is not just a t-shirt I'm buying. I'm buying an identity. I'm affirming or reinforcing an identity by making this purchase, right? And finally, this is the biggest one: maintain consistency. Maintain consistency. Most businesses fail at branding because they just lack the consistency, either consistency of voice or of character that they've built, or mission, or, and this is probably the biggest one of the biggest point, promise. They failed the consistency of the promise of what they're delivering. Right? If the shipping times went crazy, or all of a sudden they changed manufacturers and the product went downhill, or how many of you guys have gone to your favorite restaurant and all of a sudden it sucks, and you're like, what happened? They're like, it changed ownership. And so they changed the ingredients, or they changed how they made it. They made it more economical. Well, that is the promise that is getting broken. And now all of a sudden you want nothing to do with the brand. Does that make sense? Cool.
Do you go through a similar process as well for those that are trying to go through a personal brand, like an agency owner that's going through trying to build his personal brand in order to grow?
Absolutely. You still want to go through this exact same thing: is what is it that makes you unique? Why do you exist versus others? Especially, man, in the agency space, there's so many agencies out there.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us are just trying to compete on how do we sell someone better on that I do Facebook ads. But everyone does Facebook ads.
Yeah.
So if you can start to actually establish, like, why specifically do you exist, or why specifically should someone be coming into you, or what specific problems do you deal with, that's what makes you unique, right? Amazon was just like eBay. They sold stuff online. They did shipping. You could get a big list of items, but what Amazon really focused on is shipping and fulfillment. We are so fast at it. You get it so much faster. And that's all they focused on. Even though they're the same dang company, they found one area that they could do better than anyone else. And that's what allowed their brand to actually scale. And they were consistent on that promise. In fact, if you actually Google, I don't have it in this presentation, but if you can Google Amazon's flywheel, right? Flywheel concept, whole idea is that one piece of the machine feeds the other piece and it builds momentum and allows the machine to grow autonomously. Their whole flywheel is around logistics. If we get more people selling their stuff here, then we can get more warehouses. If we can get more warehouses, it'll decrease the cost for shipping. If we can decrease the cost for shipping across the board, then we can get more people selling stuff on Amazon. That's their whole thing. So they found that one thing that lets them be better than anyone, and that's what allows their brand to actually build. Cool. All right. So here's 4 questions I would be asking consistently, not just day one or when you're doing this, but consistently, either quarterly, yearly, but you've got to be asking these questions consistently. Is 1, who or what are we throwing rocks at as a company? Right? Who is the antagonist? You have to, if you want to build a brand, you have to stand for something. You have to stand for something. And realistically, you need it to align to what your market wants someone to stand for. Okay. Not everyone, but your market, you have to stand for something. Next one, or it's 3 questions. How well does our market feel seen or understood? Just like a relationship, we want to feel seen. We want to know that the other person understands us. So that's what we want, right? Why do companies or brands, when they don't have as big of a brand, or even when they're bigger brands, but they're trying to expand, why do we use influencers? It's because if we don't have the brand reputation, we can borrow brand and trust and understanding from other people. Okay. And so if a consumer sees an influencer, even if they don't understand my brand, but they see an influencer that they vibe with, that they understand, that they aspire to be like, if we can use an influencer, we can then drag that brand affiliation into us. And now all of a sudden, that's what we talked about in the beginning, association, right? And finally, is our experience dependable? Dependable. My pleasure. What fast food chain says my pleasure? Everyone knows, unless you don't live in America,
Unless
you
you're
don't
in
love
America.
amazing chicken. Chick-fil-A, right? They're product, the way they deliver their promise is so consistent and dependable that is what's allowed them to really build their brand, is having that promise delivery so good. And if you're a brand or you don't have a brand, you're trying to build a brand and you don't have this part down, you do not want to move to anything else until your product or service, your promise, is dependable. That's the most important thing. It has to be dependable. And then from there, everything else can start to build. Okay. Cool. Now, true brand starts from within. I said earlier that I would talk about this, and I think this is really important because I think too many brand owners, even agency owners, if you're trying to build a brand for yourself, a personal brand or your agency's brand or a client's brand, true brand starts from within the company. It cannot just be a marketing effort, or else it won't ever last. You can't be consistent unless you build brand from within. And so, do you have consistent language internally at your company? Or is branding just the marketing effort that you try to do on the front end? Right? It starts with core values inside of your company. Example, even one of the things that we did early, like this probably with first few months of Hemon, when we launched it, we started calling this thing Hemon Quality. Anytime we had a win for a client, or we did something really good, or we had a bad level of service or fulfillment or deliverable from an internal team member, the question was, is this Hemon Quality? Because we had to start even creating the brand internally to get our entire company wrapped around this idea of we're different. And the whole idea of Hemon Quality was, we don't care what great quality is. We don't care what excellent quality is or bad quality. We care only about what our own standard of excellence is. And that's been consistent. So if you right now looked inside of even our wins channel, inside of our Slack, you'll see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts, but on every single post of a win, a case study, a screenshot, whatever, you'll see hashtag Hemon Quality at the end of it. Right? Because every single time we had something that was good, I wanted to train the team to associate that with Hemon Quality. And so branding can't just be marketing. It's in every aspect of your company. And it's within your core values, your mission statement, your vision statement. But every single thing that you can try to find, you want to try to start establishing it. This is also why I love when I see agencies start doing swag to every new hire. You should be sending swag as a new hire box of, here's a hat, here's a shirt, here's a sweatshirt, here's a journal. You want them to embrace the brand, that they no longer are just working at an agency. They're a part of something different, a vision, a mission, and they have to align themselves. And so the more you can start getting people to grasp on those different areas beyond just, we work at Hemon, that's the company name on my LinkedIn, but it's actually, no, you're part of a train, you're part of a movement, and there's nothing different. It's one of the best things I ever did at my company. And I think it's why we started to really build great talent and retain talent, is because of the constant enforcement of not just, this is what we do, it's, this is who we are, right? Next, do your core values and mission statement support your brand voice? Example, Liquid Death, their mission statement is, our evil mission is to make people laugh and get more of them to drink more healthy beverages more often, all while helping kill plastic pollution, right? If you look even inside of their bio on Instagram, right? Their whole idea is to put an end to death to plastic. And they're taught, then you can clearly see that even in the bottom right, that picture is of Bert Kreschner. I forget how to say his last name, but he's a comedian. And you can see even the, better than back sweat, right? These are all things to make people laugh. And it very much identifies and aligns with their mission statement. So from end to end, you can see that they're carrying out a brand, and some would look at their Instagram and go, hey, yep, that's a brand. They're doing great branding, but it all starts with their mission statement internally as a company, right? Cool. Baseline requirements. Let's talk about some baseline requirements. Then I want to open up to some questions because I'm sure there will be some, but baseline, bare minimum requirements, brand guidelines. The brand should have colors, fonts, do's, don'ts, social media guidelines, emails, and customer journey experiences. This is actually of a client's brand guidelines that I loved so much back in the day that we'd helped. If you scan this QR code, it's actually just a copy of their brand guidelines. You can scan it, put it in a Google Drive, and if you're trying to make some for yourself or for a client, It's a great example of what it looks like and how good it actually is. So that's just there to help you. There's no opt-in, it's just a Google Drive link. So you should really, really like it. And I really love the way they put it together. But you'll notice on it, it's not just here's how our logo looks or here's how fonts look. It also shows on social media, this is a great example of what we should look like. Here's some don'ts of what we should look like. Here's the vision and mission statement of the company. That stuff should all be a part of the brand guidelines, because that is what the brand actually is. It is the embodiment of your company vision and mission. Well, so hopefully that's helpful. That's it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. It was an incredible presentation, my man. It's really important to be able to walk through brand, not only with your clients. And like you said, even if you do something small, like you're just doing their email marketing or something like that, it gives you huge credibility to be able to come to them, get on a meeting with them and be like, hey, let's walk through all of these things. Not only so that it helps you with what you're doing, but then it gives you that credibility. And then they actually are like, wow, okay, these guys know what they're talking about. They're not just some other marketing agency, especially if they work with other marketing agencies that are just running my emails, right? Like they actually understand what it is about. We do have one question that popped up on here. It says, how do you come up with a catchy mission like Liquid Deaths?
I mean, coming up with one, it's kind of like, how do you come up with a joke or how do you come up with an ad? I think it first comes with intentional work into it. Don't think it's just going to come right off the bat. I think for the last mission statement that I wrote, literally, I think we had about 65 that we wrote and put into it. And then it took about 3 or 4 hours of a room of literally like 9 people of going through of like, oh, we like that piece of it, but oh, we don't like that piece of it. And then all of a sudden someone said one thing that clicked and it was like, that's it. Right. So it just takes intentional time on it. But just like a songwriter, how do you write a song? It takes time. You got to put work into it. But also I would say too, is like, what are the companies that you aspire to look like? Go to see what their vision statements are. What are their mission statements? How much does it align with yours? And then you can use those as a baseline. Don't rip it because it won't feel authentic. You want mission statements, vision statements to be authentic. But if it helps, what is a company you aspire to be like? What is their vision and mission? Why do you think they came up with it that way? And then just massage it, work on it. Don't expect it to be done in one setting. Allow this to take a week, 2 weeks, because everything your company does going forward should be based on the vision and mission statements.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you had talked about as well is kind of like finding the enemy as well. How do you use that to be able to brand yourself or to brand e-commerce brand? Sorry.
So how do you find the antagonist?
Yeah, and then like how do you use that to come up with using the opposite of like this is I'm the hero for this group of people, but do you also look at like the enemy, like this is our enemy and this is our common enemy of who we're fighting against or whatever. Like for Liquid Death, it's plastic and boring water, you know?
Yeah. So when it comes to a specific brand, I would not attack a specific brand. Or assert your antagonist as another company or another brand. I would assert it as a core problem, right? So even Liquid Deaths, right? They're not going after Dasani. They're coming after plastic in general, right? And by and large, vision and mission statements, you want to be grandiose, unless you don't have a grandiose vision, which is also fine. But understand too that brands that ever elevate to the mass market, they're always grandiose visions, because no one wants to go like you exist to improve the suburbs of Springfield, Missouri. Like no one wants that, right? Unless you only want to serve Springfield, Missouri people. But it normally is grandiose. But it's like most brands as a whole have a reason for why they exist, especially in the e-commerce area. Unless someone just goes, no, actually, almost always there's always a reason, right? Like no matter even if you make clothes or t-shirts, it's like, why did you make that specific t-shirt? A lot of it's like, well, I found trouble finding shirts that fit me well because I'm bigger and I like to go to clubs. And so bigger shirts are just like bland and they're black. And so I wanted shirts for bigger people that could go to the club. Like that's a specific reason. But why did you create that? Well, it's like big people should feel comfortable at a club too. That could be a great vision mission start, right? And so it's just like, what is the reason that your products actually exist? And then stem from there.
Okay. Awesome. Dylan has a question. He says, "Can I start helping my clients with branding even if I don't have my brand established?"
I would say the first question is like, do you have an expert? Like, do you deserve to actually help someone with it? You know, I mean, plenty of people don't have a brand, but they understand exactly how to do it, right? Plenty of basketball
Mhm.
coaches know how to coach basketball. They can't dunk a ball. Well, that's okay. But the first question is like, are you worthy of actually helping people? We shouldn't be charging people for stuff that we are not worthy to help them with. But if you understand it, yeah, of course. I think that just, if nothing else, helps everyone.
For sure, for sure. Um, Kian, I'm reading yours right now for agency owners. But I'm just going to pull it up. It says, for agency owners starting out with personal brands, how would you uh, how would you to generate attention whilst separating yourself from the rest?
Yeah. So I think I actually was talking to someone recently about this, and when everyone is saying the same thing, you have to go, how do I say the same thing but in a different way? Or how do I say the same thing in just pulling other levers that people gravitate towards? So example, right? He's a hunter, and he's a really, really great hunter, and he helps people with businesses, and he helps people with advertising. He's like, yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to go out hunting. I'm going to record my content while I'm hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's not going to attract everyone, but there are plenty of business owners that also love hunting that are going to
Yeah.
pay attention to him now and trust him now, because they're like, oh, I love hunting too. And now he's doing content while hunting. Ooh, instant, a different connection. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so start thinking about, like, what are the hobbies that you like to do, or the things that you like to do that you know that there's a market that also loves to do that. And you can say the same thing, but those people are going to pay attention to you more than anyone else, just because, hey, that guy drives a nice car and I love driving cars. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I'm paying attention.
They identify with the person that you are, right? So
100%.
figure out what makes you unique, and then also be authentic to yourself, because people are going to notice when you're trying to fake it or pretend like you're not who you really are.
And you can only fake it for so long,
Mm-hmm.
like, man, you might be able to do a year, maybe 2 years, but 3 years, like, let's pretend like when money's no longer a problem, like you making all the money that you want, are you really going to want to have to fake it
Mm-hmm.
consistently? Or you're going to realize at that point, it's like, I hate this, I'm going to stop doing it. And all the brand work you did just goes out the window.
Yeah.
So being authentic is really, really important, because with the millions and millions of people that we have access to in our markets, there are a percentage of people that are going to be exactly like you and love the things that you like. You don't need everyone. You just need that 1%, 2% that can pay you, and you'll make all the money you ever want to make.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Any more questions from anyone else before we kind of close this out? I see one more that popped up inside YouTube. I'm going to wait for it to pop up here. All right. It says, how to start personal brand from zero.
Um,
As a marketer, I'm assuming.
yeah, I'm assuming this is a marketer. Maybe this is an agency. But I think that the first thing, if you want to do it, and again, I want to actually remind everyone what I said in the beginning, is that if you are newer or smaller and revenue is your problem, you probably shouldn't be worried too much about brand, right? Or if you are worried about brand, have zero expectations on it. Okay. So all the people you look up to online right now that are like, have so many followers and so many people are engaging, they've been doing it for like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. Right. And so if you're saying I'm at zero, it's like, great, but make sure it doesn't take up the time for you to actually do the work that creates the income and the money. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think, especially nowadays, because of all the social media and the reels and stuff like that, so many agency owners that are like making no money or very little money, they're making like 20 grand, 30 grand a month, 40 grand a month. Right. They're like, oh, I spend like 10 hours or 15 hours a week on content. And they're like, we need more sales though. So what should I be doing? I was like, you should probably stop making content and just start calling people, start DMing people, start getting to network or masterminds. Like there are so many more high leverage things that you can do. But I think some people gravitate towards the personal brand content because shooting a video requires us to not talk to anyone.
Yeah.
So it's just easier. But if you're starting at zero, it's just start making content and be consistent about it. Start posting every day on Facebook. Start making a video every day on Instagram. Make a video once a week on YouTube. Just start doing it consistently, because You don't actually even have to be good at branding as a whole, but if you're consistently putting out content and value to the market, that's how you start a brand. It's just giving value consistently to the market. And over time, people are going to start recognizing it. Like no one, Mr. Beast didn't start out like Mr. Beast now. He just started making content, making videos that was fun for him. And then the market almost started establishing the brand for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, if he does something else, or like music artists, we see this all the time. Music artists, they get known for a specific style of music just because they like it. And then all of a sudden they come out with a different style of album and people are like, oh, I hate it. This guy's terrible. It's because the market has established what his brand is, but all he was doing is making music. So it's just consistency.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I tell marketing agencies a lot too, I mean, I know this is specifically talking about personal brand, but even if you're talking about your marketing agency, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, how good should I make? Do I need a website first? Do I need a logo first before I start doing all this? And I think one of the most important things, even for a personal brand or for a marketing agency in general, is just like just do something, like get the results first, and then people will start talking about you, and then that's when you can start making your content when people are talking about you already. Same thing with your agency, like start building your website when you actually have people looking you up on Google and need a website, not when you don't even have any clients and you're just figuring out how to get started and you just want kind of like the credibility of having a website.
Log out of that Vistaprint account. You don't need the business cards. Like that screenshots earlier where we showed our agency's growth. Like we didn't have a website for like 4 or 5 months after that. And so it's like, you don't need any of that in the beginning. You just need people to know you. And if you're an agency owner, I would almost say like as an agency owner, it's much easier to build your personal brand faster than it is an agency brand. And so if I was looking at order of priority and I was an agency owner, I would build my personal brand first and then look to build an agency brand later to where your personal brand can bolster your agency brand. Yeah. It's just going to be much easier. People connect with humans way more than they are ever going to do with a brand name. This is also why we see in ads. Why does ads ran from a personal profile page or fan page work much better than just a brand page in and of itself? It's just people connect with humans better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, my man. Well, I really appreciate your time. One of the things that we like to do at the end of each live for either people that are watching now or that watch it later, I always ask the guests to bring 3 different pieces of advice. The first piece of advice, it can be on topic with what we're talking about now or completely off topic. The first piece of advice is for agency owners that are starting up and that are making below 30K a month or are just starting up, never really gotten off the ground. The second piece of advice are for people that are between like the 30 above the 100K realm, that are more mid-size, pretty large, doing 7 figures a year. And then the last one is for people that would like to exit their agency and are almost at that level of just being that larger agency. So those are the kind of the 3 different levels or the 3 different advices.
Cool. All right. I'm going to try to remember all those. First one, when it comes to branding, standing for something and getting people to hate you is far better than standing for everything and no one loving you. Okay. Best advice there. Advice to agency owners who are just starting out. If you're just starting out right now, it's not, I think the weakest marketing angle is someone who's trying to say that they're better than everyone right now, just because everyone's saying that. You have to innovate something. If you're an agency owner starting out, your only option right now to try to like win King of the Hill is what can you innovate, a new process, a new strategy, a new different take that business owners or agency owners are currently not capitalizing. That is going to be your way to get in with A, big names, but B, just to grow. Everyone's saying the same thing and doing the same stuff. If you're trying to beat people like me on meta ads, it's not going to happen. But how can you do something different that I'm not doing, or I can't see, or we're too big of an organization to pull off or test accurately? That is your window to big names, but also just big opportunity. If you're 7 figures a year, you can have high profit or high growth, but you can't have both. So you've got to choose your poison. So the most profitable times in my agency was when we were at like 150, 250K a month. And then 250 to like 550K, much less profit, made much less money. And then it spiked up again north of like 650. So it's like you can't have both things. So know what you want. If you want a lifestyle business or you want a lot of money in the bank because you want to invest in real estate and other stuff, that's great. But slow the growth down. That's what's going to hurt you really, really bad. Labor. Keep that labor controlled. If you're looking to exit, if you're looking to actually exit, you have to build an actual business that's not built on your reputation. You have to have sales teams in line. You have to have marketing automated or in line. But also, when you exit, are there people that are going to be leaving with you? No one wants to buy a job. People want to buy an asset. And so most of the time when I see people who are at that point in revenue, they are not close to that level when it comes to org or structure or operations, but they're there in revenue. So they think that's it. But people want to buy an asset. They don't want to buy a job. That's it.
Awesome. Awesome, Ashton. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And you put up there, I'm going to flash that up there again if you want to go to the last slide so people can find you and follow you.
Yeah.
I'm going to add that onto the stream for you. They can find you there on Instagram. Do you do any other social platforms or just Instagram?
Facebook is where I do long form copy and I kind of like work through a lot of my processes and thoughts.
Okay.
Instagram is going to be much more mindset leadership stuff. But if you're looking for like advertising, marketing, or really tactical stuff, Facebook is where I put that stuff.
Perfect. Awesome. And I know that you mentioned that you have something called Hemon X. Is that a resource that would be helpful for either brands or marketing agencies if they were looking to contact you about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hemon X was literally the program I created internally for my company to train marketers. I found that hiring people was very difficult, or hiring people with good skill was very difficult, like many people probably realized. And so I built my own program to put people through that I hired to train them. And then there's exams and quizzes. They have to pass all that before I let them touch my client accounts. Trains on Meta, Google, YouTube, and TikTok. But yeah, it's a great resource. It's built for other internal teams.
Okay, awesome. So if they want any of that, they can either find you on Instagram, or I'll even drop it in the group as well so that people can reach out to you if they need that information.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. Well, my man, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it and appreciate all the value that you brought. I know that everyone in this group found it very valuable just based on what the comments that I saw, and we'll see the response that we get from everyone that'll be watching it later as well. But I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, man. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. This was the last stream that we have for the month of July. Thank you guys so much for coming out. It was an incredibly valuable lesson that we learned from him. And I hope you guys took notes. I hope you guys take this to your clients, are able to apply it to their businesses, not only to help increase their revenue, but also to help increase your credibility, your retention. And then if you're looking to build a personal brand, this is it, guys. This is the way that you're able to go through every single one of these processes if it's something that you're interested in doing. And most importantly, just take action. If you're starting on the smaller end, just take action, get everything running. Once again, this is brought to you by the Agency Domain. We are a community of people that is looking to bring to you the right guests with the right information and put you inside of a network of like-minded entrepreneurs, like-minded agency owners, so that we can scale together with the right information and the right people. So thank you guys so much for coming by, and I will see you on the next one. If you'd like to join the group and you're not in it yet, there is a free link below where you can join and come hang out with us. And most importantly, go eat a steak today. Cheers, guys. I'm going to go eat